Here we go. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so kicks off our first webinar of 2021. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. We appreciate the continued support of our webinar. Today, we're tackling the future of retail e-commerce trends and insights. A big undertaking when anytime you talk about the future, but after a year we're all willing to put in the past, I can't think of a better way to start this year than tackling this topic. A little bit about myself, the opening act, if you will, before we get to our main speaker. I have been in this digital marketing space over 11 plus years. I am now the Senior Business Development Manager at NetElixir. Most of my background actually comes from a financial entrepreneurship background, which I'm very fortunate and blessed to be able to find a perfect fit with NetElixir. I've been here almost 6 years now, and my analytical background fits very well with the fanatically analytical nature of NetElixir. We do right by our clients, we set the right expectations, and we back everything up with data and facts. And that's something I think that you can really appreciate in today's digital world. One thing I want to just keep in mind, we're all here to grow. Knowledge is power, but knowledge without action doesn't get you anywhere. And just a personal quote I like with Benjamin Franklin there, the idea that success, progress doesn't, they don't have any meaning without action behind it. So that's something just to keep in mind as we go through this. Think about what actions your companies are going to be taking with each insight that you're able to gain as we go forward here. Looking at the agenda that we have for you today, 4 key topics. I'm going to walk you guys through about NetElixir. So for those, again, who are here on their second, third, or fourth multiple webinars, we thank you for the continued support. For those that don't know about NetElixir, we'll walk you through who we are and what has differentiated ourselves over the last 16 years in e-commerce. Then we'll tackle the retail e-commerce trends. Being a finance guy, I'm a very big fan of trends. And I think it's very critically important in this day-to-day world where we're kind of living and dying by every single action. If you're one of those that goes in, logs into their ads account or their analytics account and lives or dies by the data that you're seeing on a day-to-day, start to think of the mindset in terms of trends. What is the industry doing? Look at things on a weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis. That's how we have to approach this. Then we want to get into the new online shopper. If anything has taught us in 2020 is that the new online shopper is radically evolving, and we're all trying to play catch up and who they are. So we're going to talk about who they are and then what you need to do as a business to capture and retain them, especially those high value ones, as we'll talk about. And then finally, we get into our 2021 retail e-commerce predictions and recommendations for you, the marketers. And this is where, again, look at these. These are predictions that we're going to be making. But again, we want you to think of the action items that you're going to be taking on these predictions that can best help you within your industry. And getting into who NetElixir is, we want to talk those high value customers. That's the critical component. Could be anywhere from 3x to 20x growth once you figure out who those high value customers are. And that's who you want to target. It helps alleviate a lot of the noise in the background and really puts a purpose to your marketing. And that's what we're going to be about. And we'll show you how we go about doing that as we get forward in this presentation. To give you a better overview of who we are with some of the solutions that we are able to offer our clients, the partners that we've worked with, we're humble enough. We don't have always all the answers, and it's great that we have UPS, Google, Bing, Facebook to help us out and help support our clients. It is not the mindset that NetElixir wants to promote and give our clients is that consult, that relationship. We're here for the success of their business as if it was our own. You could see we run the full gamut of digital services, paid search shopping, all the way down through technical and development. So there's not anything in the digital spectrum that we don't cover. A lot of our conversations actually begin with talking to about what they want, what do you want to accomplish in terms of goals? And a lot of times the want and what they need are two totally different things. And our team is trained to diagnose those. And then we figure out the how. How do we make that happen? And that's where that consultation comes in. We're moving way beyond clicks and impressions and getting to a much more, philosophical, consulted, logical based approach to our services. And before I introduce our speaker today, I really want to ask each and every one of you a favor. We're very blessed and fortunate that you're giving us 45 minutes of your time. And we would just like to ask for a little tiny homework assignment after this webinar. If you could please fill out a short survey, very, very short, I promise you that. It helps us to continue to deliver the quality knowledge and insights you're seeing on our webinars. And anybody that's attended prior webinars knows the value in those. So there is a large team behind these webinars that you don't see that helps put these together. And on behalf of them, I know they value your feedback, and that will help us continue to do a better job for you in the future. And that brings me to my speaker today. Not just my speaker, but all of ours today. We're very blessed to have the founder and CEO of NetElixir, founder of Party Bingo. They're real man who really doesn't need an introduction, especially if you've joined our webinars before. Countless guest lecturers, special guest on panelists, keynote speaker. He's my boss, but more importantly, someone who I consider a mentor and a friend who I've gotten to know over these last 6 years. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce to you our CEO of NetElixir, Udayan Bose. Udayan, take it away.
Thank you very much, Anthony. I must say I'm blushing, everyone. I mean, that was just a very flowery introduction, Anthony. I mean, it has been absolutely a pleasure. The last 6 years, we have really had a fascinating ride when Anthony sort of joined us 6 years back. And it's really a privilege that we are doing this. This is interestingly the first time that we are co-hosting a webinar. So very, very excited about that. So today, I mean, my sessions, those of you who had attended some of our previous webinars, there is a lot of knowledge, there is a lot of content, there is a lot of data that we essentially rely on to come up with these retail e-commerce trends. As Anthony mentioned, there is a big team, there is a big research team, which we call the NetElixir Retail Intelligence Lab, which is working in the background, doing all these number crunching. So I really wanted to call out their efforts in doing all this hard work. I am merely presenting on their behalf. So I hope some of the insights that we are able to share with you, and again, as Anthony has mentioned, I hope it really triggers a different line of thought. It really helps you to see as to where the retail e-commerce world, at least we believe, is moving to as well, and accordingly plan your marketing campaigns as well. So this slide, I am pretty sure that I have shown this slide multiple times earlier. This was published by a combination of groups. The US Department of Commerce data was the basis for this, where 10 years of growth really happened in 3 months, and this was in Q1 2020. And we all saw an incredibly fast pace of adoption of e-commerce. So we wanted to know as to where things are, as to how much it really has gone. So we did some data crunching on the US Department of Commerce's data. And this is what we came up with. Again, this is a bit of a flashback, and data is only till November because the December data comes out tomorrow. The blue line that you see in these, or the blue bars that you see, essentially is the year-on-year increase in online sales. So Jan blue bar is Jan 2020 versus Jan 2019. As you can see, we were trending along very happily at about a 8 to 12% year-on-year growth range. And suddenly the pandemic hit, and the year-on-year growth went up from as low as about 12%, went up all the way to almost 20%. And then it kept going up. In the month of June, it went up to as much as 35%. And even in the most recent data capture, which has been there, it went up to a little above 30% as well. So 30% year-on-year online growth compared to the previous year. Essentially, where did it get to in terms of when you talk about the total retail? So as a percentage of total retail, we saw that e-commerce used to account for about 14 to 15% of total retail sales. So if 100 pieces are getting bought on retail, overall, 14 or 15 pieces were essentially driven by e-commerce. That number went up as much as about 22% in the month of April. It came down a little bit, but in the month of November, again, we saw it going back up to about 20.5%. So again, a pretty big shift. So a 14 to 15% to a 20.5 or 21%, understandably, is a massive shift. And this is all data we have taken from the US Department of Commerce's data that they publish. And what does it mean? How did it really sort of go to this level? And what are some of the online consumer behaviors which have really sort of been instrumental in driving these shifts? We'll be studying that a little more deeply. But let us dive into first the new online shopper persona. The reason I call it the new online shopper persona is primarily because the pandemic changed a lot. And it is a very humbling time. It's a very difficult time for the humanity. And we are still in midst of probably the peak pandemic numbers that we are seeing at. The good part is there is light at the end of the tunnel. The vaccine distribution has been progressing for almost about 10, 12 days now. And we expect as slowly the vaccine, more and more people get vaccinated, I think the overall the confidence and just that energy in the economy sort of comes back again. And hopefully that will be sort of changing quite a few things. And we'll be covering that during our webinars as well. So we wanted to highlight 3 very specific online shopper personas today. But before going in, it's important for me to lay out a bit of a strategic or a theoretical construct. And this is what has been published by Bain and Company way back in 2015. So essentially, they have tried to classify what are the different value elements based on which we as consumers make a choice to purchase or not to purchase, right? So for example, reduces effort. So any item or any purchasing object which reduces the effort, that can be a motivator for making a purchase. Anything which provides for fun, understandably making a purchase, nostalgia, motivation, provides hope, etc., etc. So we saw fundamentally this pyramid changed quite dramatically during 2020, during the pandemic. And it changed primarily because some of the factors became exceptionally important. For example, reduces anxiety became exceptionally important. For example, reduces risk became exceptionally important. For example, provides hope became exceptionally important. And suddenly, if you really, for a moment, consider that these circles suddenly became bigger, right? So reduces anxiety became a bigger circle, right? Which directly correlates to a greater emphasis being put on by the consumers on these particular factors. So this really led to evolution of some new consumer behaviors. This also led to some transformation of some consumer behaviors as well, which I wanted to touch upon. The first one, I think this shouldn't come as a surprise. Before the pandemic, about 40% of all the American meals were consumed outside of home. Let me repeat that number. 40% of all the meals were consumed by Americans outside of home before the pandemic. Now that suddenly for a span of about 2.5, 3 months, let us say from 40%, became a very, very small percentage. The 40% probably went down less than 10% or less than 5% in many cases, right? So there was a lot of at-home dining which sort of boomed. There was obviously a lot of convenience factor. There was obviously a cost factor as well, or a pricing factor. But very importantly, it really exposed a lot of consumer to a very different way of eating. More importantly, it really engaged a lot of consumers in terms of the preparation of meals. So meal preparation became a pretty hot topic, and as a result of which companies like Blue Apron that you see right here, they really sort of flourished and prospered. Now, there was obviously a convenience value, there was a safety value, there was a pricing value, and then there was this concept of how can we really sort of make meals, which is more of a creativity value as well. So all of these combined to really fundamentally transform and shift the overall consumer behavior. So the question which I essentially have, something to think of, and we don't know the answer yet because, as I mentioned, we are still pretty much in the midst of the pandemic. What does it really mean in terms of once we really get back to normal after the pandemic? Will we ever see that 40% of the meals which were consumed outside of home, will that number ever again be 40%? When I say ever again, I'm talking about the next 24 months after the pandemic. That remains an open question. We'll see. In our opinion, we believe that number may take at least about 5 years to get to that level, which was there in Jan 2020, let us say a year back. As a result of which, some of the companies really also came in. As I'm pretty sure many of you are aware, DoorDash sort of did an IPO and it sort of soared $190, 86% above its initial public offering, right? At the same time, the entire stuck at home, I use the word stuck in a very humble manner, because that's what I think we all have been experiencing, or at least experience for at least a span of about 2 to 3 months, starting the month of March. We saw an emergence, a lot of those companies like Peloton, or even maybe a mental wellness company, meditation apps and so on, like Calm as well as Headspace, which really exploded. So essentially, that was a very interesting one, right? You suddenly pack everyone up and lock everyone at homes, there is minimum mobility outside as a result of which, and that's really the testimony of the human spirit and the human enthusiasm and the human resilience and creativity, which I really sort of do a hat tip for, that we are able to find out ways of engaging ourselves. Some of the companies who are placed and positioned very well obviously benefit from that. For example, the DoorDashes and the Pelotons. So one question which I think is very clear is, what are those different shifts and what are some of those emergent trends? So I have taken this report actually from a Google report. This was a fantastic presentation on 3 themes of change. So what changed? The first one was there were revamped routines, right? For example, a most easy routine was we were not really traveling to work any longer, right? In the month of March end, or let us say April, we were not really sort of commuting, that the commute was suddenly gone, right? So how that was typically an example of a revised routine, or we were not really eating outside as much as I narrated during the Blue Apron case study and so on. So just imagining this for your product or your category, what are the revamped routines that you're observing? And then how might the consumers expect the retailers or businesses to really provide additional safety practices when the consumer transitions back to in-person interactions? So something to think of. I mean, I think Anthony, you sort of brought about a very interesting point. I mean, you said that, Udayan, do you think we will ever get out of this habit of not really just quickly applying some hand sanitizer on our palms and really sort of rubbing our hands? Because it's becoming almost like a norm, right? So those are the things. It's very important to understand as it really applies to your business. What are some of those rituals, the new daily rituals and routines, as well as some of the practices which may really impact your business, not just now, but probably forever? The second one is the contact-free interactions as well. I think that's an important one, primarily because it's important to imagine that such a reality can even happen. I mean, in the month of Jan or Feb, I'm pretty sure none of us would have imagined as to what really happened in the last 12 months. But as we say, you can only connect the dots looking backwards, right? So now we know that has happened. Understandably, the consumers are really sort of shifting, their preferences are changing, and the businesses need to shift as well. So the question is, how might the business reimagine the customer experience as e-commerce shifts from a convenience to a necessity, right? I mean, in the month of April, everyone had to either go online, because very few people were really going to the stores because many of the stores were even shut. So from that perspective, that reality was a dramatically different reality from what we had been used to. Again, as resilient folks, we as human beings really tend to adapt. What do those adaptations really mean for your business? How might the businesses rethink their physical offering in new and safe ways, right? For example, one of the things that I can really share with you, a personal anecdote. I still remember in the month of April and May, definitely, probably in June as well, when we used to get some online stuff delivered at our home, we always used to really wipe it with those sanitizing wipes. Right? It just doesn't, because we didn't really feel safe. And there was just this notion that, oh gosh, what if I sort of contact COVID from one of these boxes? In fact, initially we in fact left our boxes outside, believe it or not, for almost about 12 hours, 24 hours. So all of these things, how much of a somatic impact we would have on our minds and our psyche, which would sort of continue to live on. So those are the things I think it's very important for businesses or retailers to really understand. And many companies are really already thinking from that perspective. Amazon has been investing an enormous amount in terms of what we call the safe supply chain. Right? There are many other companies which really have really invested in making this, because they believe that this is a trend which will never ever go away completely. The safe supply chain is the concept which is the next one, is essentially sort of talks about that part as well. So when you put all of these together, so you had a business which had a particular characteristic in the month of Feb 2020. Come March 2020, we got hit by the pandemic. So there were certain influences. April, the consumers obviously sort of were very clearly changing their engagement behavior with your business. In the month of May, you probably sort of have figured out as to what are some of these changes in terms of customer journey, customer experience. My question is, in the months of June, July, and August, how much did you adapt and change? I'm pretty sure many of you have adapted. I know many of the clients that we have worked with have to make fundamental changes with their overall business operations so as to fundamentally alter the consumer experience, like an entire journey. So that's, I think, one of the things which something to think of. It's more of a thought process I think, and a way of us almost like future casting this. That's what we are really referring to out here. So consumer expectations in retail, for example, changed as well, right? We used to go 40% of our meals were outside of home. Just an example of let us say consuming food in the US. Now from there, suddenly it changed to how can we get this to you, right? So suddenly the door dashes became very important, right? Or for example, let us say the Instacart became very important, and so on and so forth. So those were fundamental changes in the business processes and the business models as well. The question is, again, post-pandemic, how many of them would continue to live on and how many of them would sort of completely move back? Our opinion is when a change or a shift of this magnitude happens for that longer time that we really have been through this, there are certain things which fundamentally can never ever go back to where it was previously. And I repeat that, never ever go back to the same level where it was previously. The question is, what level will it settle down at is the fundamental question. And how exactly is your business adapting to that? There are certain examples in this one. This is a fabulous report. I would highly recommend this. It's a WPP report on what is called the future of brands in motion, right? Delivery of where you are with Domino's, or transaction network for mobility, and Walmart's new scan and go technology. All of this, I mean, I know Amazon Go, we all probably have seen those Amazon stores. So what does the future really lead to, and what does it really mean for your business? So that's the first question I wanted to leave you with. How exactly are you adapting to the new customer expectations? Because the customer expectation fundamentally has changed. I had mentioned in one of my previous webinars that per a study by an Oxford PhD in 2009, it takes about 66 days of continuous usage, or let us say 66 unique or consecutive adoption patterns or usage patterns for a habit to set in. I'm pretty sure we are much beyond 66 at this point in time after 11 months or almost 11 months, right? So some of these behavioral shifts have fundamentally gotten ingrained. My question is, do you know as to what are these shifts and how exactly have you really transformed your business models, your business processes to really cater to this so-called the new consumer? The second key theme that I wanted to present again in the new online shoppers was this concept of first-time online shoppers. The prolonged lockdowns, they really led to the emergence of first-time online shoppers. Now, these shoppers, they had never ever purchased anything online prior to the pandemic. And now what happened is after a bit of hesitation in the month of March, and of course, with the help of, let us say, friends and family, they were able to break that initial barrier of successfully completing an online purchase. Now, what we saw was something which is extremely and incredibly important, and it is incredibly intriguing as well. Around 17% of first-time online shoppers have continued to shop regularly online. Can you just think of even the magnitude and the impact of that, right? So there was a lot of discussion. In fact, I have presented, we didn't know way back in the month of April and May, what percentage of these first-time online shoppers would continue to purchase or engage with the brand, right? We have seen that. I think we have enough data to really come up with a number that 17% of all those folks who for the first time ever in their lives purchased anything online, they have continued to shop regularly online. Moreover, their average order value was 12% higher than the other shoppers as well. So not only were they purchasing more frequently or fairly regularly as well, but they were purchasing more as well for every purchase occasion as well. Something to think of, because normally when we tend to draw those customer journey maps, we tend to draw the customer journey maps of our core customers, maybe customers who really we want to acquire, and those are the high value shoppers, and we sort of have these things. So these maps really have to be defined now by each and every business and each and every retail business. It's almost like imperative. And these maps would be very different compared to what your previous shoppers really look like, what your normal, regular, heavy shoppers really look like. A very important concept, right? So if I were to draw a bit of a curve or a graph, right? It'll look at it almost like a separate graph we are talking about. So the question is, how exactly have you really been able to track and map out the graph for your business and adapt your overall marketing mix so as to be able to engage these new to online shoppers to your business or to your site? And I'll sort of share some stats from eMarketer as well. they predicted, and this was a little, I think sometime in August, they had predicted this, that they are assuming about 7.4 million new digital buyers purchased for the first time ever online in 2020. That's a massive number we are talking about, massive number. Even more important, if these 17%, as our research, Netflix Retail Intelligence's research shows, have continued to purchase, and it has been about 10 months now, I think it's very fair to say that many of them probably would continue to always purchase online. Now, suddenly you have this 17% of the brand new to online. So 17% of this 7.4 million people who will continue to shop online, which is one of the key factors why you see those, remember those initial bars that I showed you from the US Department of Commerce's overall retail graph. So we believe the impact of that is close to about 2.5 to 3%. Just these new to online shoppers have led to a shift of about 2.5 to 3% of the total retail sales. So what used to be 14% of total retail sales by e-commerce, that has gone up to from 14% to 16% because of this new group. It purchases more regularly, they are new to online, and so on and so forth. Let us now look at as to what are some of the other factors which have taken it to 16 to 20% or 16 to 19% as well. Which category has been more successful in winning the new shoppers? I think more successful is probably more an appropriate word. No, apparel has been slow, but understandably, just because we have been so much locked at home, the apparel industry overall has been gone through a pretty turbulent time over the last about 10 months. But some of the other categories, food and gourmet and gifting, have been the biggest winners per our research that we have done. So any retailer in these categories, I think it's very important for you to understand as to, do you even know as to who your new to online or first time buyers on your site are, and how exactly are you taking care of these folks? Because they are interested in engaging and doing business with you. So that's a very simple question. How well do you know your new customers, right? And new customers is a very important part because, as I mentioned, they follow a very different trend and a different sort of a purchase curve or a pattern compared to the pre-pandemic customers that you may really have got. The third theme, I think probably shouldn't come as a surprise, is the always connected theme, right? So I think smartphones have really sort of transformed everything. I mean, in fact, I would probably not have any qualms that when Steve Jobs launched iPhone in 2008, I think that was 2007, and it got commercialized and sort of marketed in 2008 onwards. I think that fundamentally changed everything forever. I know it's a pretty big statement, and you have to pardon coming from a big fan of Steve Jobs as well. But I think from the other perspective, I mean, if you really look at the transformative effect, now connecting the dots backwards, I mean, I'm pretty sure all of us would appreciate that. We saw something very similar here as well. Now mobile is driving 48% of the overall online sales. Do you know as to what that percentage just 2 years back was? That was less than 23%. So it has doubled. The mobile purchases now account for almost half of all the online purchases, and this is across categories. For certain categories like cosmetics and beauty, it is a lot higher. Apparel also, it's a lot higher. And certain categories are probably a little lower as well. But mobile has become essential. And so effectively, I think beyond mobile, if you really look at and just again put this entire context of what has happened in the last about 10 or 11 months, I think one of the things that we are very clearly seeing is a shift from a product-centric approach to a connected experience approach. What do I mean by that? So all of the retail marketers have been marketing, and the traditional or the classic form of digital marketing has been, you do something on search, you do something on social media, etc., and these are connected narrowly, right? Now, effectively, everything is coming around putting the consumer at the center of it, or your customer at the center of it, consumer at the center of it, and trying to build an entire loop of connected experiences. Primarily because there are no set or batched patterns in which the consumer really consumes content. So it's almost like an always on thing. And it's possible because of all the smart devices that you have at your disposal. It's definitely possible, right? For example, you probably sort of wake up because your Alexa sort of wakes you up, and then you probably sort of brush your teeth with probably a smart brush. Maybe you sort of just go ahead and stand in front of a smart mirror and it sort of tells you some of the part as to how is the weather, etc., and so on. So I think the entire thing of connected this part. So what happens to this entire concept of the overall privacy and the data privacy? That is going to be more and more important as we really progress. But I think one of the things, and I don't really want to jump the gun, and I don't really want to sound something which probably this purely my personal point of view. I believe the direction which the pandemic has really led all of us, I think I am seeing a lot more confidence in consumers being willing to share with you their personal details if and only if you are responsible with your marketing touch points. And I should probably be even calling it marketing. It's almost like how exactly are you engaging the consumers or your consumer? That becomes a key or an important point. So we have really clearly seen a shift from products moving to connected experiences. One of the parts which I personally am again very bullish about is the AR, VR, the extended reality. I don't know if many of you may have really followed this news where Facebook has tied up with Ray-Ban's research division, and they are trying to see if the extended or the augmented reality can at least initially be sort of brought into Ray-Ban glasses. Can you just imagine the impact it would have on the entire world of digitization and digital world? It will transform everything. I think one of the struggles that we have seen, which the Google Glass guys sort of faced earlier, they were trying to approach it from a technologist perspective. Facebook, how it is approaching, or how even Apple is approaching it with its iPhone and the overall iPhone camera is from the consumer's perspective. And I am a big fan when you really approach it from the consumer's perspective and try to really blend it with consumers' life. I think people are a lot more likely to adopt it compared to when you approach it from the technologist perspective, right? So the question is, how will the AR, VR transform the shopping experiences? What does it really mean for your brand? For example, let us say you sell home furniture, right? Check out what IKEA has done. I mean, IKEA, theoretically, you don't have to step into their store. Probably you can't. During the pandemic, I think there are a lot of the stores were shut down, and but you still wanted to get a sense. So is it possible for you to get an experience on the IKEA website, or probably maybe using an IKEA app, whereby you are able to see as to how does their chair fit into your home, right? How exactly does the entire environment really look when you sort of have different pieces of furniture placed around your home as well? So fundamentally, it is my firm belief that AR, VR will transform the shopping and the retail experiences forever. And this is something that I would highly, highly recommend that anyone who's in the business, anyone who's in the retail business, please do sort of take cognizance of this fact. So the question is, are you really prepared for the connected world? Are you really prepared for the connected world? Because the world has changed. And I think some of these things which have been happening are quite massive in terms of the shift that we are looking at. So with that, in the last about 5 or 6 minutes that I have before we go to the Q&A, and there are some questions which are coming in, I wanted to share some of our retail e-commerce predictions, right? So we talked about 3 big consumer themes and some of the recommendations for marketers as well. So first, e-commerce sales growth. So this is, I think, one of the most difficult things for us to do. I must really confess that it takes us an enormous amount of time to come up with this projection. And as Anthony rightly mentioned, I mean, during these times, a prediction at best probably has a 50% likelihood of not being true or right. So, but having said that, I think there are certain trends that we have been observing and collecting. And interestingly, we had made a holiday projection that the overall e-commerce sales will grow by upwards of 30%. Finally, we saw in the month of December, it went up to as much as 47% year on year. But overall holiday season came out to probably around about 36 or 37%. So higher than what we had projected, right? So I think some of the projections is based on a lot of data and data modeling and based on some of the macroeconomic factors, of which unfortunately none of us have any control of. So I wanted to first narrate as to what our predictions are for Jan, Feb, and March and Q1, because beyond Q1, honestly speaking, I don't really think it's fair for anyone to really come up with a projection beyond Q1, given the number of changes which are essentially underlying changes which are there. So in Jan, we believe that it will be a year-on-year 12% e-commerce growth. Now, why will this growth happen? A big chunk is because you have to understand that online sales, there is a certain chunk, as I mentioned, the new to online shoppers, etc., which has built up. So it's normally a very normal addition that we are talking about, right? And last January was a fair normal January. It was a pre-pandemic January. So we believe that on that 12%, Why 12%? Why not 17% or 18%? Seems to be a little low. Well, there are certain macroeconomic factors and there are certain practical factors as well also in play. So what happened in December, we saw a very unique trend, which again is a very unique holiday shopping trend that we observed. And that trend was people were doing a lot of unplanned purchases in certain categories. When we track back, we can only hypothesize as to why people really engaged in unplanned and excessive spend or maybe purchasing, specifically around the 10th to the 20th of December. And we believe that there were multiple factors. One is just the psychological factor that during the holidays, I have to purchase. So that's, just believe it or not, that's, I think, one of the things which I think is a big driver. The second driver was, it was almost like, gave me a bit of a freedom. It's more of an self-expression, I think, is what it can be correlated to this additional spends during the holiday season. The third component is also if you really look at the disposable income, again, the stimulus checks hit in April and then sort of later as well. I think that the people had a little bit of a disposable income, which was actually substantially higher compared to what they had in the month of Jan or Feb. Right. So all of these factors combined, people engaged in sales, but the challenge was when it came January, they found that many of these stuff they don't really need. So we have seen an unprecedented surge in the number of returns of the stock which had been purchased in the month of December. And that is one of the things which is dampening the overall growth this year, this month. The ongoing pandemic obviously is a challenge. I mean, many of you may have read today's the overall unemployment, the weekly unemployment report which came up. The numbers are very, very concerning and it still remains exceptionally high. So that obviously continues to play a very important part. Overall, there was a little bit of a substantial amount of socio-political uncertainty as well. And I think it was just that we had to all come out of that as well. So that's, I think, one of the pieces which I think we may play a role as well. And the 12% year-on-year growth that we are projecting would primarily be driven by some of the staple categories like grocery or pet supplies. So people still in the so-called needs versus wants, more of the wants category, we don't expect the percentage sales to go up much in the month of January. It is in the needs category. What do I really need? Like the grocery and the pet supplies. And even probably a little bit of home furnishings as well, though it's a bit of an overlap, we expect that. Feb, we believe that as more and more people get vaccinated, the consumer sentiment, we should start seeing a bit of an improvement in the consumer sentiment, leading to an increase in product purchases for categories that have been negatively impacted. For example, travel retail, we believe there would be a positive impact because I personally remain very optimistic that starting from Q2, we will have some semblance of normality return to travel. I don't think I really want to use the word normal in these circumstances, but some amount of travel will come back and the travel retail should sort of see a turn back as well. The only challenge is there would be a bit of a demand unpredictability leading to this product stockouts. We are seeing already, I mean, I spoke with at least about 7 customers in the first week itself that we are working with. And many of them were facing some massive challenges where their containers were stuck either in the San Francisco or they had supply chain problems coming from materials sort of coming from China, et cetera, et cetera. So the supply chain challenges would continue to really remain, we believe, in the month of February as well. And probably may continue into March also. And there would be a demand unpredictability as well. I mean, what will I purchase? What will Anthony purchase? What will someone else purchase, essentially? I think those are the things that we really have to so the only way of you to be able to keep a track of that is very closely following the consumer behavior and the overall product mix that the consumer has been really purchasing or is purchasing. The month of March, you see a lower percentage because remember that massive graph, that huge spike that I showed in the first one. So that's where the second half of March, and I would say was a very abnormal spike by every means, right? We saw completely abnormal trends between the 16th of March to the 31st of March. So that's, I think, one of the reasons why we are forecasting a much more muted 5% year-on-year growth in the month of March. But if you really factor in that part of that abnormal spike in the second half of March, that 5% is not bad. That 5% probably in the normal circumstances may have been very close to about 18 or 20% as well. So overall, net, our projection in terms of overall US e-commerce growth in the first quarter of 2021 compared to last year would be about 9%. We believe online sales will continue to account for about 18%, 18% of total retail sales. So fundamentally, what used to be 14% in Jan 2020 now has become about 18%, right? So there has been a shift. And I have gotten asked many times by a lot of analysts, a lot of investors, a lot of customers, how big was the pandemic shift? There has been a lot of talk about acceleration, how pandemic has really accelerated the entire digital transformation and really adoption and increase of e-commerce and so on. We believe that the pandemic led to 24 months or 2 years equivalent of jump in terms of online sales. This 18% probably is fair to assume that in normal circumstances, we may have really got to it in the year 2023. But we really have leapfrogged to 2021. And that's, I think, what the pandemic has really been able to deliver or drive as well. I'll be happy to take any questions. I'm sort of already getting some questions. I'll address that after my presentation. I wanted to also share a few recommendations for marketers as well. And we have a huge range of marketers joining us, as well as clients and partners joining us today. Some of the recommendations, this is based on some of the observations and trends that we have seen. The first part, which we are seeing very clearly has become tremendously important, is your brand purpose. What does your brand stand for? Brand purpose is no longer a fanciful thing, because if your brand does not stand for anything, you probably will find it very difficult to really gain any attention or any sort of an evangelism from your customers. Very, very important. And we have seen the last 10 months, one fundamental part which really has been very refreshing, I would think, that consumers prefer to interact and engage with brands which stand for something. So if your brand doesn't stand for anything, it becomes a commodity. It doesn't become a brand. And that is, I think, one of the things which really has emerged as a very, very important component during these last 10 months. The second one is the customer personas. This is, I think, something that I have raised earlier as well. What are the new customer personas for your business? Who are the new online shoppers? Have you really tracked them down? And what exactly are you doing to really keep them engaged on your website so that they keep on doing recurring business with you? The third one is rapid experimentation. So this is something which really has helped Team Netlexit tremendously in delivering value for our clients. So during the holiday season, and we take a tremendous amount of pride that during just this holiday season, which I would probably rate as the most difficult holiday season we have experienced at Netlexit in 16 years of our existence. We have been around for a fairly long time, 16 years now. And most difficult primarily because things had to change. And we had to come up with this practice of rapid experimentation using customer data to make the marketing campaigns effective. I'll give you a simple example. On Cyber Monday, for certain categories, the first till about noon Eastern time, the percentage sales was down 50% year on year compared to Cyber Monday 2019 versus 2020. And understandably, there was a tremendous amount of panic. So just because we had really pre-performed a lot of the experimentations and come up with those test options, plan A, plan B, plan C, our team was able to activate a plan C and really get everything back on track. And we ended Cyber Monday with about an 18% year-on-year increase, right? But if you really look at the impact of rapid experimentation during times like this, I don't think I can really overemphasize it. This is probably, if there was one thing, the three things I would have to guide, this probably would be one of the top three things which I would very strongly recommend anyone to do. At least build a partner ecosystem if you can't really do all of this in-house. And the partner should be agile enough. They should have the technology, obviously, and they should really constantly be challenging you to really keep on doing these experiments as you really sort of move forward. My fourth one would be tap into the power of mobile plus extended reality. I shared the example of Facebook announcing essentially the partnership with Ray-Ban in terms of the research that they are doing on the AR/VR side. Please think of how exactly are you creating connected experiences across various customer engagement points, right? How exactly is your brand engaging your customer across the entire customer journey? And the consumer journey, by the way, has changed during the pandemic, right? So first, you really need to understand the consumer journey. And then you really have to say, how exactly am I really catering to that? That is something that we believe is definitely the future of retail is really the mobile plus extended reality or virtual reality and augmented reality. The last part I would sort of leave with is a partner ecosystem. Now, we are very privileged to really work with a little over 120 businesses in the US and help them and really as their digital marketing partners. Now, while we take a lot of pride, it is a tremendous amount of responsibility as well, because businesses expect their partners to be agile, to be nimble, to be knowledgeable, to have the technologies and constantly keep pushing each other. So we have seen and we very firmly believe by creating this strong, healthy partnership ecosystem, I think it becomes a win-win situation for both. It becomes a win-win situation for the businesses. It becomes a win-win for the partners that are essentially aligned to help you as well. So one of my very strong recommendations would be for all of you to think about building a partnership ecosystem that helps your organization compete and win through insights, innovation, and agility as well. Because the speed at which things are changing, the amount of uncertainty, you definitely cannot really do everything yourself in-house. It's probably something which you can do it, but you will never really get to that world-class level if you really plan to do everything in-house. So do you really have the right partner ecosystem that you're working with? So those are my recommendations for the marketers. Happy to take any questions, but let me now pass it on to my colleague, Anthony Back.
Thank you, Udayan. Much appreciated. I hope everybody found a tremendous amount of value in this presentation, in this webinar. Thank you again so much. We want to leave you with a certain token of thanks for joining us here today and your support. And we talk a lot about action. There's a lot of uncertainty, and we have two choices with that. Stay with the status quo or act on it. And I think this is a great way to start. We're offering our NetElixir scorecard complimentary up until the end of the month. So you have until January 31st to sign up for that. Just go to netelixir.com/scorecard. And our team of consults will put a scorecard together for you, book some time to review it with you. It's a very, very valuable tool, and it's a great way to start your year and towards your goals for 2021. So hopefully you take advantage of that. And with that, Udayan, we are getting some questions coming in that we can turn it over to you. I know we're on limited time. So we have our first question from Jane, asking if we have a sense of retail spending online for health and wellness categories, such as vitamins and supplements or wearable tech for health. She was saying the spending accelerated during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Jane, that's a great question. I don't have the exact numbers, but all that we know is because we work with just a couple of wearable tech in the healthcare side clients, and we have seen that number increase exponentially, specifically of the wearable health tech. But let me sort of get back to you in terms of what is the precise number and very specifically broken down into segment as well. But when I say exponentially, it is almost like a 3x increase is what we experienced specifically in Q1 and Q2 of last year. And that's what I can probably relate back to, but I'll get back to with the very specific number. But a great question, Jane. Thank you.
And we have another question from Joydeep. Can the brand perception or purpose be enhanced or redirected to fit the new market expectations?
I think that's a great question, Joydeep. Thank you. I mean, absolutely yes is the answer, right? So I think fundamentally, I mean, as I mentioned, consumers expect the brand for stand for something, right? What is the purpose of your brand? I mean, what makes you even exist? I think that's the key component. And what really has happened is, as the pandemic has changed the entire landscape or the entire ecosystem, I think brands have really had to ask this question fundamentally themselves. The way that they have been able to realign their strategy, a simple example probably is all these safe supply chains and so on, right? So brands are trying to really morph so as to their brand purpose has really remained fairly constant, or probably they are trying to approach it in terms of amplifying it in the current circumstances in a different way. But that's a great question, and we are seeing that happen all the time.
And Udayan, just to add to that, I mean, we have our own clients that have been within fragrance and looking at what you were talking about with having to adapt to the different behavior and persona of the safe-minded, topical consumer when the pandemic was going on, where your fragrance transition some of your manufacturing to produce hand sanitizer. Be there for your customers, care about their customers. Even though you produce fragrance, or in some cases we have apparel, shift some of your manufacturing to producing masks. Give them a child kit where there's 7 masks for each day of the week. And these are some of the things that, you know, we've worked with our clients on and adapted their brand to and some of the, even their products to shift the needs of their consumers. Same thing with you have a physical therapy or a gym supplements. They are now shifting from build muscle to build immunity, and coaching them on those ad copies and seeing how always doing A/B testing to see how this new messaging and this new brand perception is working with the topical minded, safe oriented customer that we saw emerge in 2020.
Absolutely. Great points, Anthony. Great points. Absolutely. Well, I think we have got to the end of the round. Is there one more?
Oh, I think we had just one more question, Udayan, from Lisa. May I share your link for the digital marketing score with some of my customers who might benefit? So, asking if we can extend our scorecard beyond.
I would
just
think
this
so.
webinar.
Absolutely. Our goal is to really sort of help as many customers as possible really benefit from this opportunity. So definitely yes.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
Yes. Lisa, so feel free to share as much as you want. And I think that will just about conclude our time today, kicking off our first webinar of the new year, one of many. And we wish all of you the best of luck and success in your business. NetElixir is always here. Udayan's information is right there. I gave my information earlier, but you can always reach me, anthony.turco@netelixir.com. Give us a call. We're always here to help, just a phone call away. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great rest of the day and continued success.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Bye, everybody.